So it seems like the WTO is modifying laws of different countries. And that's where the next issue comes in, the modification of laws. When a country becomes a member of the WTO, they have to follow its rules. In some ways, the WTO dominates and controls the country. An example is lowering of tariffs. A tariff is a tax that the government puts on imports from other countries. So there will be no direct competition between the large corporations and the local farmers. When there's no tariff, that means that the local farmers are directly competing with the large corporations. This can lead to the destruction of local farmers. The next issue is dumping. Dumping happens when a large corporation overstocks a product. It could be anything from a hairdryer to beef. When a large corporation overstocks a product, they could either throw it out, give it to charity, or dump it. Dumping is a process that the large corporations do when they just want a little bit of money just because they can have it. They sell these products in third world countries for a very low price, much lower than what the local people are selling it at. Because tariffs are not allowed by the WTO, local governments cannot regulate this, which puts local farmers and markets out of business. The WTO claims that it is a democratic organization, but there's a lot of criticism about that. Although this might be true, the proposals, the agenda, and the major decision making is done by a small portion of the organization. This is called the Green Room process, and it has been known that only 20 to 25 countries are involved. Naturally, the countries are more larger and developed ones. Again, the main countries which dominate WTO and world trade is known to be the US, UK, EU, and Japan. The WTO is feudal in its decision making. The effects on local people. As I have said, dumping by large companies from developed countries have been very bad for the local people in third world countries.
Not only this, in the WTO, water is a good. This means that the country cannot regulate the export of water, even for environmental reasons. In addition, water has now been made a service, which means that the large corporations can privatize the water in a certain country. This can lead to a country with water only being exported and not used in its own country. Even worse, soon the WTO is considering having water as an investment, which means that the large corporations can sue a country if they interrupt their free trade. All this is leading to citizens, especially in Africa, not being able to afford their own water. When a country says water is a human right, they run straight into the WTO, because if it is, they cannot sell it or market it anymore.
This is very interesting. There are third world countries who side with the WTO, such as Latin America. Latin America controls 60% of the banana imports to EU. But because of the EU's tariffs, it has been very hard for Latin America to make enough money. On the other hand, Caribbean islands, because of their long-term relationship with the EU, they have been taxed less. The WTO ruled for Latin America. This meant that the tariffs of the EU went down. So the Caribbean banana exporters will directly compete with Latin America. Since the Caribbean islands were poor to start with, it is going to be very hard for them in the future to make enough money to support itself. This is a mixed case because both sides have their point. Although the Latin American farmers are directly or indirectly part of a large corporation. Another case with two sides is medicine. Africans and poor people elsewhere cannot afford standard medicine because of the patents the WTO has put on them. The patents were initially created because countries like India and China were mass producing cheap medicine, which was a problem for the companies who develop the medicines, causing them to lose a great deal of money. On the other hand, because of patents, medicines became too expensive to buy for poor people. In countries like Africa, where AIDS is a huge problem, most poor Africans cannot afford the medicine they need. There have been a lot of protests against the WTO from the time it started. People are not only protesting against the issue of unfair trade, they are also protesting against destruction of wildlife and other things that are loosely connected to the WTO. Protests took place in many countries of the world, but the most famous one still remains as
Seattle in 1999, Washington, D.C. in 2000 and 2002, Quebec in 2001, and Genoa in 2000.
WTO is an essential organization. Indeed, it does not always do bad things. But overall, they seem to favor the needs of more developed countries and large corporations, as I have explained throughout this presentation. The problem is the people who are running the WTO and their connections with large corporations. Check out the internet for web pages such as bananalink.org.uk or WTO.org for more information. Thank you for watching this presentation.